Hi, this is Gary from Aldan American. Today we're going to show you the installation of Tubular A-Arms and the Coilover kit on our Turbo T Regal. So this kit fits all of the G bodies from 78 to 87. This particular car already has our Coilover kit. We installed the Coilover kit a couple of months ago as a test, and now we're testing the control arms to see how they work. Follow along and we'll show you how it's done. So I'm going to now take the caliper off. I'm also going to remove the spindle so that when we take the upper and the lower control arms off, there will be nothing in the way. It'll make it a lot easier to work on, and it'll make it better for photographing. So now that we've removed the spindle, I'm going to remove the coilover shock. So I have to take the lower nuts out and the upper nuts out. And this also is our double adjustable. So what we're going to do is remove the upper rebound knob first. So when you remove the upper rebound knob, you just unscrew the whole knob. You don't take any of the set screws out. So now that I've removed the spindle and the coilover shock, I'm going to take off the lower control arm. Now that the lower control arm has been removed, we can install our new Spawn lower A-arm. One of the nice things about the A-arms is they do come with new hardware. So when I'm putting the lower control arms on, one of the things I like doing is I've got these large area fender washers that are thick, and that spreads the load from the nut over a larger area of the frame. If the control arm's been on and off a couple of times in its life, the nut just kind of grinds into that point and makes it a weak spot, whereas this will take and spread the load over a larger area. We've torqued our lower control arms down to 75 foot-pounds. Now, because these are a Delrin bushing, you can torque them before you put everything together. And after they're torqued, you want to be able to make sure they move nice and freely on their bushings. So I'm going to remove the upper control arms. And so I'm going to use my impact gun, and I'm going to spin the upper control arm bolt. Now, normally I wouldn't do that, but the Spawn arms are included a set of upper control arm bolts. So now I'm going to install our Spawn upper control arm. These are the included bolts that come with the kit. So I also get them with the ball joints and Delrin bushings. So when I took my original upper control arm off, I kept the original shims that came out. I know that the car is going to need to be aligned, and I know that the alignment guy is going to need additional shims most likely. So now after I put my upper control arm on, I'm going to use the original shims for the alignment and put them back on in the same order that they were removed from the original arms. I'm getting ready to install our RCX double adjustable shock. So one of the things I must do first is put a little bit of the anti-seize on it. So what I like to use is the copper-based anti-seize. And what I'll do is I'll put a little bit of anti-seize above the spring seat. When we adjust our spring and our spring seat for ride height, the anti-seize will go underneath the spring seat so that way the spring seat does not gall because it's an aluminum bodied shock. When we go to disassemble our rebound knob, we do not want to undo the set screws. We just want to unscrew it and remove the knob. The Spawn arms, the way the upper top stop and the lower bottom stop are set up, it has a little bit more travel than the OEM arms, so I use a longer shock with the Spawn arms than the original stock arms. The shock we use with stock control arms on the G-body is a 13-inch shock, and this is a 14-inch shock. I'm going to reuse the thrust bearings that came off the coilovers that were previously in the car. So these have already been greased, and I'm going to set them in place. And it is an optional item, and it's part number ALD26. I'm now going to install the spring on top of the thrust bearing on the spring seat. Now we're using the 450-pound spring because this is a V6. So when I installed the shock, I was very careful to make sure the nipple of the bushing was centered inside the hole in the frame, because if it's not centered, what'll happen is the stem of the shock will rub the frame. So I'm going to take my bolts and I'm going to put them in the T-bar, which makes it a little bit easier to line up to the lower holes in the control arm. I also use the smaller washers on the T-bar, so it allows a little bit more flexibility to fit in the hole for floating. While the spindle was still off, I adjusted my spring seat to preload the spring to the correct level. I already know, because I've done the other side that it needs 2 inches of thread exposed to get the ride height where we want on this car. So on this car, we're not lowering it, so we're putting it back to about the stock ride height because my buddy Larry really wants the car to look more like a stock car because it is more of a sleeper. The spone arms have a sway bar end link already attached, so it uses a conventional style bushing on the top and a rod end on the bottom. I've hooked up my sway bar, I've hooked up my upper bushing, and so what I do is I take the upper bushing and I tighten down the first nut so that the bushing starts to bulge, and then I take my second nut, which is the jam nut, and I tighten it against the main nut. Then I take my adjustment knob. So this adjustment knob, you're just gonna screw it in. I go all the way full clockwise, and so when it reaches the bottom, then I count 10 clicks back. 1, 2, 3, 10 clicks, and that will put it in the middle of the adjustment range. So there's 20 points of adjustment on the rebound knob. So by going full clockwise and back out 10, that's the center point of your adjustment. We've installed the upper, the lower control arms. We've installed the coilover kit. We've showed you how to adjust it. We're now ready to put the wheels back on the car, go out, drive it, do a little bit of testing. And the final thing we're gonna do after we're happy with the ride heights is we're gonna take and have the front end aligned. For more information on this kit and anything else that's manufactured by Aldan American, check us out at aldanamerican.com.